This will either be my greatest creation or my biggest mistake.
The year is 2012, and Sony has just released an absolutely freakish camera, the Sony NEX VG900. It captures 5.1 Dolby audio, progressive HD footage with Cinematone colors, and 24 megapixel RAW photos. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, it's full frame, and it's a Sony Handycam.
I'd like to show you one of the world's great cameras.
This episode of Retro Review is sponsored by Storyblocks. We'll talk about them a little bit later.
Sony is pushing the boundaries of the consumer video camera market with their new 35mm HD full-frame NEX VG900. Let's take a look.
The Sony engineers must have been snorting G Fuel when they were brainstorming this camera, because if you look at the releases before and after the VG900, something just doesn't make sense. Before the VG900, there were a bunch of APS-C handy boys that were being released. Then 2012 rolls around and we get this full-frame Chad cam, and after that, we get more APS-C cameras. So something's weird here. Why was it a bunch of APS-C cameras, one full-frame one, and then they didn't make more full-frame ones for a while? In fact, after the VG900, we didn't get another full-frame professional video camera, notice the air quotes, until 2018, which was, say it with me, the Sony Venice. Right. The freaking Sony Venice. And before your undies fill to the brim and you light your keyboards on fire, yes, I know there were other full-frame Sony cameras in those years, like the A7R and A7S were coming out in 2013, 2014, and there were some strange full-frame Sony security cameras. I kind of want one, actually. But I still find this Handycam history very intriguing. So why was this camera so unique, and why was its design left in the dust after just one iteration? Well, the only way to really figure that out is to probably buy one. Okay, class, how much do you think I spent on this camera 11 years after its release for just the body? Go ahead.
I don't know, like $2 or something?
Wrong, it was $2,800.
Why do I do this to myself?
It's fine. This YouTube thing's totally gonna pay off, brother. It's totally gonna work, bro. Don't worry. Don't cry. Actually, you can get one of these cameras used on eBay for around $800 or $900. But I opted to get a pretty much brand new one from Amazon Prime, but I'm definitely gonna keep it after this video. I'm not going to return it at all. And now that I finally have my hands on the ultimate chatty daddy cam, it's time to take it out in the field, test it, and see what this footage looks like. But really quick before that, I want to show you how I shot the fancy B-roll of this Handycam. I don't have a fancy studio, it's basically a spare bedroom, so sometimes it's hard for me to get really cool looking shots. Luckily, Storyblocks is sponsoring this video, and I downloaded a ton of assets from their website, and then I projected them on my 55-inch TV, just going from my Mac Mini and airplaying it to my Apple TV over here. And then I just got my RGB light here, matched the color to the scene from Storyblocks, put my camera in front of this camera in front of the TV, and immediately got really sweet looking shots. If you aren't using stock footage in your workflow yet, now is the time, because there are a ton of creative ways to use it like we did today. Storyblocks has a massive library of video, images, music, and sound effects. And you get unlimited downloads of royalty-free, high-quality assets that you can use in any project. And all of it is for one predictable subscription cost. I think you should add Storyblocks to your toolkit like I did. It will elevate your projects like it did for mine. So if you're interested, check out this URL or click the link in the description. Thank you so much for your support. So on the side of the camera, you have three main exposure buttons. You have iris, gain and ISO, and shutter speed. If you don't use these buttons, it looks like it automatically adjusts the exposure. Yeah, it does. You can see it changing. It's in full automatic mode right now, but if I want to manually adjust things, I just hit the button here, and I can set it to what I want. So let's try 2.8. Okay, let's re-engage the ND filter now. Let's go to 50, or 48. Let's see if it has 48. It has 48! My Sony cinema camera, the FX30, my A7S III don't even have a 48th shutter. What the heck? The screen's actually really good. Viewfinder is even better. I mean, this viewfinder's really, really nice, which is so wild. This is kind of like geared as a professional video camera, it seems. It's a very weird hybrid. I'm still figuring it all out. Indy, what are you eating? Hey, did you just eat a turd? Oh, that's cool. That's actually so cool. You can put the screen like that, like a cinema camera. That's very handy, and it's fully articulating, and it's cool. Just like the modern Sony FX30, FX3, you can have peaking on while you have autofocus on, so you can see what's in focus. Very, very handy. I gotta be honest, folks, this camera has a lot of great things going for it, even in modern day, 11 years after its release. The viewfinder and the screen are great quality, totally usable, and the surround sound mic on this thing sounds pretty dang good, and it makes sense to have a mic like that on this camera because a lot of dads and moms were probably using it to document everyday life, their kids' events, and they probably wanted to hear everything relatively even. And this does a good job of doing that. The controls on this camera are very simple to use, and all of the normal things that you would need to access are on the side of the camera body, just like a cinema camera. But it's more stripped down and really easy to navigate. I mean, I think that made sense. The camera has a native E-mount, which works with all modern day Sony lenses, which is super cool. But one of the coolest features is if you put an APS-C Sony lens on the E-mount, the camera will automatically detect that it's APS-C and automatically switch into APS-C shooting mode. I mean, this is the Sigma 16mm. It's at f2.8 right now, but I mean, it's pretty wild. That is just a super cool, convenient feature, and I'm sure it's able to be done because of the 24 megapixel sensor. So there's still room to shoot in full HD, even when you're cropped into APS-C. Bars! And speaking of this sensor, dude, the photos that come out of this camera are like actually beautiful. It's super weird. The JPEGs and the RAWs look incredible. I was like kind of confused when I was looking at them on my computer. I thought maybe I shot them on a different camera with the same SD card, but turns out this thing's just spitting out fire photos. And I could go on and on. I mean, this thing has a headphone jack, an uncompressed mini HDMI output, a zoom rocker that turns every prime lens into a zoom lens, good battery life, tally lights, 3 record buttons. Sheesh. But at the end of the day, this camera is definitely not perfect. The Cinematone colors are whack. Holy red skin tones. And I would recommend that you just don't shoot with them. Just use the standard profile. The autofocus is very slow, and sometimes you need to hook this camera up to your car battery to resuscitate the speeds. The body weighs exactly 3 bald eagle feathers, so any lens that you put on this camera will automatically make the camera very front heavy. Let's demonstrate. This is the Sigma 85mm f1.4, and when I let go, and I gotta be honest with you folks, this camera's footage does not hold up in the modern day, which makes me really sad because there are a lot of HD video cameras that are older that still have a really nice, clean looking image, like high quality image. This one is just not there. There's a lot of moire patterns if you film a surface like brick or something with a lot of detail. And it kind of breaks my heart because the photos from this camera prove that this sensor is actually kind of glorious. It's really pretty. The colors look pretty good. It's really sharp and detailed with the 24 megapixels, but maybe it was the processor or something that just couldn't get that video quality up to par. And it's a little bit sad, I'm not gonna lie. Those are the main negatives that I have about the camera, but obviously I'm biased because I'm looking at this camera from a modern day perspective. The truth is, when this camera was released in 2012, it got solid reviews. So why did Sony leave it in the dust? In 2012, a lot was changing in camera tech. For instance, the Canon 5D Mark III came out, which was continuing to revolutionize shooting with small cameras, but getting that nice cinematic 24p looking footage. Also around that time, Sony dropped the FS700, which was a serious professional video camera with stacked features. And then you have the VG900 full-frame Sony Handycam, which kind of sat somewhere awkwardly in the middle of consumer and professional. And when it dropped, it came with a hefty price tag of $32.99, baby. But USA Today reviewed this camera for some reason back in the day, and they said it was noteworthy to see this cost on the world's first full-frame camcorder. So maybe it wasn't that expensive back in 2012. Gotta think about inflation, am I right? But it doesn't matter what USA Today thinks about this camera because now it's just a fart in the wind. But it's one of those special farts that makes a really loud splat on your wooden chair and makes all your friends at the party laugh and shower you with gifts and snacks. It was special. I'm genuinely sad that this camera design was never revisited and that it was left in the dust by Sony and their G Fuel snorting engineers. Please don't quote me on that. But the silver lining is that this camera is now a one of a kind. It really is a uniquely built camera, which is really rare to see these days, where every camera that comes out now feels pretty boring. And it almost seemed like a dream camera for me because I grew up filming with tape Sony Handycams and making videos with my sister and my friends. And now I shoot with Sony mirrorless cameras and small cinema cameras. And the VG900 seemed like it tried to blend those two worlds together, but I genuinely think it was just ahead of its time.
Sorry. Why are you so expensive still? Why did you cost me $3,000 for this video?